We are anonymous. We are the signal inside the noise. We exist because truth should never kneel to power. We track war shadow conflict and the way organized violence moves across borders. Tonight, we are not talking about a distant battlefield. We are talking about Cookie's Heartland, Kentucky's Heartland, and the interior of the United States, where a multi-state strike led by the Drug Enforcement Administration, supported by ICE state troopers, local sheriffs, and prosecutors exposed how a foreign cartel quietly built infrastructure on American soil. This is the story of a state sweep that ended, with 51 people in cuffs, all tied to the Sinaloa cartel, and why it matters to you. Before sunrise, the quiet of Cookie's Heartland was shattered by the sound of engines and boots. Convoys moved in Louisville, Lexington, and Charleston at the same moment. Federal agents rolled down dark streets, stacked on doors, and breached targets in Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. This was a coordinated three-state raid. When the sun finally came up, 51 people were under arrest across Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee. Investigators told WLKI's Addie Minor, also reported by Addie Minors and Addie Minors, that this was massive. They called it the largest narcotics operation ever executed in the region, built to shatter an active supply network, not just round up a few street-level sellers. The numbers alone tell you what they walked into. Agents seized 133 firearms, $78,000 in cash, and nearly 9,000 counterfeit pills. They also pulled more than 50 kilograms of meth cocaine and fentanyl off the table before those drugs could hit the street. Tables in those houses and warehouses were covered in US dollars, counted and bagged, about $78,000.00, ready for laundering runs back to Mexico. They found coded ledgers written in Spanish. They found digital payment trails. They found organized logistics that looked more like a corporate supply chain than a street corner crew. There were fake delivery manifests, disguised shipments, and compressed packages designed to pass roadside inspection. Couriers drove trap vehicles, cars, and semi-trucks, modified with concealed compartments, built to carry cocaine north, and then carried taped bundles of currency south. Every location they hit told the same story. This was industrial-level trafficking run like a business unit of a multinational. Officials said the Louisville Field Division led the operation, coordinating local sheriffs, state police, and prosecutors across multiple counties. They described this as a decisive strike on cartel infrastructure in the American heartland. For months before the takedown, investigators tracked a hidden supply line stretching from Sinaloa, Mexico, through Tennessee's hub cities into small Kentucky towns where overdoses were climbing, and families were already planning funerals. A lot of people think the activity stops at the southwest border, that the danger ends at the checkpoint. But the drugs that the Sinaloa cartel is producing make their way across the country, and our three states are certainly not immune to that. That is what agents said on camera, and that is what the evidence showed on the ground. This entire sweep, the three-state raid, the 51 arrests, all of it traces back to a single gunshot. In February 2024, Louisville police answered a shots-fired call on Linden Avenue in the city's Jacobs neighborhood. One man was found shot in the chest. On paper, it looked like another violent dispute, but that scene was the doorway. News shows us how that shooting more than a year ago led local and federal investigators to a stash linked to the cartel. The investigation from that shooting took officers straight into a cartel-controlled stash house. Inside that location, they found weapons, stacks of cash, and handwritten ledgers in Spanish. Detectives recovered 43 firearms, including AR-15-style rifles. 2 of those guns were later matched by ballistics to a 2022 homicide and a 2021 officer-involved shooting. 4 men were arrested on the spot: Jose Hernandez Munoz, Jose Lara Munoz, Juan Morales Serna, and Victor Munoz Lara. That one room turned out to be one of several distribution points used by couriers who were receiving cocaine shipments from Mexico. Each shipment arrived in what agents called trap vehicles, modified cars with hidden compartments designed to move drugs north and cash south without being spotted. It was a hidden armory, sitting quietly inside an American city. Between June and August 2024, multiple loads of cocaine were transported this way. These vehicles rolled north on highways at night, then sat in parking lots. By morning, looking like normal trucks, making normal deliveries. Once the cocaine reached Louisville, it was divided and handed to neighborhood traffickers who handled local distribution. Investigators later seized 3 separate transport vehicles used for these runs. When they pulled those vehicles apart, they found taped bundles of currency hidden inside body panels and fuel tanks, each bundle wrapped in plastic and marked for return to handlers in Mexico. That discovery confirmed a full 2-way laundering route running through Kentucky. Guns, drugs, and money were moving in and out of Louisville into the hands of the Mexican cartel. The local Louisville case merged with a larger federal probe already underway. By late 2024, the DEA's Louisville division had intelligence linking the same network to operations in Tennessee and West Virginia. In early 2020, 5 Command gave the order. Lexington, Bowling Green, Charleston, Knoxville. The doors went down at the same time. ICE tactical teams, DEA special operations units, ATF support, and SWAT-style entries hit warehouses, garages, and quiet suburban homes used as temporary drop sites. Among the 51 suspects were street dealers, mid-level coordinators, and logistics managers who arranged shipments through legitimate-looking freight companies. Investigators described spreadsheets that mapped route numbers, quantities, and driver initials. This was evidence of a disciplined chain of command, not chaos. Special Agent Jim Scott, the head of the DEA Louisville Field Division, said the arrests ran the gamut, from somebody selling drugs on a corner in a more rural part of the region to somebody in charge of bringing those drugs from, let's say, a hub city. He also said that 95% of the drugs in that area come from 2 sources, the Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, sometimes called the Jalisco Mexican cartels. That single statistic shows how deep foreign control now runs inside U.S. markets. What used to be local trafficking has become a branch office of international crime. The seizures in this operation revealed a level of militarization rarely seen outside border states. Agents recovered rifles, tactical vests, modified handguns, and ammunition drums in multiple homes. Photos released by federal sources showed walls lined with assault weapons and cash being counted into evidence bags. Some of the seized firearms had been altered for automatic fire, proof that cartel enforcement arms are operating far from Mexico's frontier. Each place they hit told a different part of the same story, how the Sinaloa network has adapted to the geography of the American interior. Rural roads replaced desert crossings. Pickup trucks replaced boats. Local addicts replaced border buyers. The drugs moved quietly through communities that never expected to see cartel reach at this scale. 43 firearms were seized in that early stash house alone, some of which were AR-15s, and 2 were linked back to a 2022 homicide and a 2021 officer involved shooting along with drug evidence. The pattern kept repeating in house after house. Cookies, rolling hills, and quiet towns hide one of the hardest-hit addiction corridors in America. Behind the calm surface, 2.5% of residents aged 12 and older struggle with opioid dependence. That is one of the highest rates in the nation. Every county from Louisville to Pikeville shows the same trend: rising dependency overdoses and families living on edge. For cartels, this is not just a problem to exploit. It is a market built on desperation. The numbers track a grim timeline. 235 overdose deaths in 2022, 1984 in 2023, 1410 in 2024. The slight drop does not mean the crisis is easing. It reflects wider use of naloxone, the life-saving drug that can reverse an overdose in seconds. Emergency crews carry it everywhere now, from gas stations to schools. Yet dependence stays. For every life saved, another shipment of synthetic narcotics enters the pipeline. Addiction has turned a steady profit for traffickers, feeding a loop that repeats across generations. What makes Kentucky especially vulnerable is how the drugs themselves have evolved. Methamphetamine purity now exceeds 95%. Marijuana on the street tests stronger than anything seen before. These are not homemade mixes. They are engineered products, manufactured in industrial labs in Mexico, designed for a higher potency and lower cost. Every new formula traps users faster and harder. Dealers do not sell only to long-time addicts anymore. They sell to first-timers who think one pill will help them study or stay awake. Special Agent Jim Scott said it directly. They profit on the backs of the families that have lost loved ones throughout our communities. So it is a significant risk. Federal agents describe the situation as both a public safety fight and a national security fight. They say synthetic drugs are spreading faster, becoming cheaper, and getting more potent. And they say cartels are adapting to digital commerce just as fast as law enforcement adapts to them. In other coordinated hits this year, federal authorities seized hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl, stacks of U.S. currency worth millions, and dozens of weapons, including ghost guns and rifles with illegal switches, and they arrested suppliers linked to the Sinaloa cartel, while calling that seizure one of the largest blows against cartel fentanyl in U.S. history. Officials warned that the Sinaloa cartel is not just a drug pipeline. It is a violent multinational that launders money, traffics weapons, moves people, and uses intimidation against communities and even against journalists. They also warned that dangerous synthetics, like xylazine, are now being mixed into street product. Xylazine does not react to Narcan the way an opiate would, which means if a victim goes down and someone sprays Narcan, it may not work. Agents say the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45 is now drug poisoning, and 5 out of every 10 counterfeit prescription pills tested contain a lethal dose of fentanyl. This is why they say the Sinaloa cartel poses a significant threat to public safety, public health, and national security across the United States. The mission is not stopping with handcuffs. After the 51 arrests, Jim Scott said the crackdown was just the first wave, and he believes more arrests are on the way. If they are doing their job right, they are going after the biggest fish they can find in their pond, and they are working those cases up and out and trying to connect the dots. Digital forensics teams are now tracing cryptocurrency transactions and encrypted communications. The mission now extends beyond stopping couriers. It is about breaking the invisible web of code and cash that keeps cartel money moving. Analysts at the DEA and DHS agree that cartels no longer rely only on old border smuggling tactics. They build private courier networks that mirror legitimate logistics chains, and what once took months now moves in days. Local post offices and regular delivery trucks have unknowingly become part of this new trafficking system. Each time enforcement shuts down one route, another opens deeper inside the country. To answer that, the DEA, ICE, and the Department of Justice are building a joint task force that permanently links intelligence units, financial tracking units, and cybercrime units. The plan is to monitor inland smuggling routes and cryptocurrency laundering channels in real time. The same fraud detection software banks use will be repurposed to trace cartel wallets and crypto exchanges. Officials say the goal is simple: turn the cartel's own technology against them. They say the next frontier is digital control of supply chains, encrypted apps, trap vehicles with built-in GPS jammers, and AI-generated fake profiles already wired into cartel infrastructure. Agents are blunt. These drugs are becoming more and more deadly, more and more potent, more and more dangerous, and they are becoming easier, faster, and cheaper to obtain. Not only do you have to focus on the southwest border, they say, but you have to focus on all the other avenues they are using to bring these drugs into the country, including Cookie's highways, West Virginia's back roads, and Tennessee's freight networks. Border checkpoints used to be the main defense line. Cartels adapted. They bypass southern scrutiny by building secondary inland routes that rely on smaller, quieter corridors. Those paths do not attract national attention. They blend into daily traffic, moving poison through places that rarely see federal spotlight. That is how cartels survive, not through confrontation but through invisibility. The impact of the Kentucky operation is already visible in hard numbers. 9,000 counterfeit pills and 50 kilograms of narcotics will never reach users in communities where every overdose means another obituary. That is immediate, tangible relief. Hospitals in affected counties reported slight drops in emergency calls in the weeks after the sweep, though local officials say it is temporary and fragile. Still, every seized shipment means thousands of potential lives spared. And there is something else. The Sinaloa cartel's reach is now fully documented across the interior. For decades, the focus stayed on border towns and coastal entry points. This operation proved that the same networks control supply lines thousands of miles inland. From Louisville to rural Appalachia, cartel-linked distributors manage the same logistics, the same branding, and the same synthetic product that once moved through Texas or California. The American interior has become part of the cartel map. This is why agents in the field call it a fight for the Heartland. We are anonymous. We are telling you this because silence is profit to them. The bust in Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia was not just cops kicking in doors. It was a warning shot. The drugs no longer stop at borders, and neither can enforcement. Every town connected by an interstate or a digital payment link is part of the same front line now. If you live in these places, do not pretend this is somebody else's problem. Talk to your kids. Talk to your friends. Look at the pill in your hand and understand you could be playing Russian roulette with your life.